Welcome once again to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 Twitter handle, as you can see, and I'm joined by Alison McConnell. Alison, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a kind of dreary, dank morning in Glasgow this morning for those of you who are maybe tuning in from more exotic areas around the world.
I'm in East Kilbride, and I believe we've got storms and snow on the way. Not yet, but it's coming. It's in the post, I believe, but there you go. Now, Alison, myself and Graham McGarry spoke about Tannadice and the aftermath yesterday. I just wanted to get your take on kind of wraparound of Tannadice and your thoughts on it. How did you see it?
In terms of the game, I thought it was very comfortable. I think the scoreline could and probably should have been far wider than what it was. I think the margin of the victory could have been far more emphatic. I think when Celtic start like that, they can be very difficult to live with. I think the first half, I think some of the football was typical of what you've come to expect this season under Ange Postecoglou when it clicks. I think Celtic were fairly formidable from middle to front, and I think the only criticism, if you want to call it that, would be that they could have been a bit more clinical in front of goal. But I think, given the fact that in recent weeks they've been playing catch-up, that Rangers have had the opportunity to go and play first and get points on the board and ask a few questions. I think the fact that they've been able to cope with that fairly comfortably, and I know the Hearts game maybe wasn't all that comfortable for the last 15-20 minutes on Thursday night, but I think essentially to have not dropped any points, to keep up and keep answering those questions is a positive. The one instant I would say is just the tackle from Callum Butcher on David Turnbull. I think there's a fairly unanimous consensus that it was a red card, and that had his foot been planted on the grass, I think he would have ended up with a really serious injury. I think it would probably have broken his leg. So I think that would be the only blight really on a good day at the office.
It was a good day at the office, considering Celtic were worried about going up there, Alison, because they'd certain key personnel missing, Anthony Ralston, Welsh and Jota, but they made particularly light work of it, didn't they? And as you say, the scoreline could have been much more emphatic.
Yeah, I think key players being out is always going to be a concern. I think when you look at how much Jota has contributed over the course of this campaign, I think he's dug Celtic out a few times. I think either with assists or with goals, and I'm thinking of that goal up at Pittodrie and a few others. I think that draw at Dundee United against Celtic Park, Jota was the one who was, the trying to get things going. He looked the most creative player on the pitch. He looked the one likely to make things happen. So I think when you have someone like that who's out, that there is a concern. I think it's inevitable that there is. And I'd say the same about Anthony Ralston too. I think it's a measure of his progress this season and what he's offered this term, that when he's out the team now, you think, there's a chance that you will miss him. As we predicted, I think it gives Juranovic an option to go and play there in his more favourable position. But I do think Ralston has offered a lot this season in terms of going forward and again chipping in with assists. You saw one on last Thursday night against Hearts, when he set up Keogh go for the goal. I think he's been fundamental to the team this season. But Jota is the one you do, I think, if fear might be the right word, but he's the one that you think Celtic could miss as this month goes deeper, just when you consider the magnitude of the games and the volume of games that are coming and the position that Celtic are in, because realistically I think you wouldn't want to be dropping any more points.
Speaking of Jota, more healthy speculation that Celtic are going to conclude a deal, activate that 6.5 million trigger clause for a permanent switch to do the deal to make that a deal in Glasgow. Alison, it kind of keeps bubbling away at the surface, but it was more positive again over the weekend that Celtic are keen to do that deal in January. Is that something that you would like to see happen?
I think it's perfectly understandable from Celtic's point of view that they would want to do the deal just now. I think it's financially it makes sense from Celtic's perspective to get it done. I think it's a decent price when you look at what you've got and you look at a player that then you know what they bring to the table. They've already gelled with the team. They've already settled. You know what's coming. It takes away the gambling element that comes with any signing. What I would say though is that the boy himself has been fairly coy when he's been asked about his future. I think maybe he might just fancy seeing what else there might be on offer and what his options may be. I think the impression that I would draw, and I would clarify it's an impression, that's all it is, but my own feeling would be that he maybe fancies just seeing what options are available to him when he gets to the end of the season. I think you've seen it often with players who come on loan, have a successful loan period, and then may wish to go and look further afield. I'm not saying that will be the case. I'm just saying that from where he is at the minute, I think he may want to assess everything that's put in front of him come the end of the season. But right now, it makes much more sense from Celtic's point of view, I think, to go in and try and get him. You know, the financial structure of the deal is already in place, which I think is a help. And also, I think one of the big compliments you could say about how he's performed and played this season is that I think there was a few questions being asked in Benfica and among their support as to why he had been allowed to go this season.
Yeah, and speaking of transfers, again, Ange came out and said it quite flippantly, but it was quite a decent response. He said he's been linked with everyone in the J League, but 3 that aren't going away are Rio Hitate, Daisen Maeda, and now Yosuke Ideguchi has been added to that list. And there was I think Dan Olowitz, who works for the Japan Times, was on Sky Sports saying that the Celtic are really far down the road with these 3 players, and he fully expects them all to join in January. From your understanding of the situation, Alison, would you be surprised if that didn't happen now? Because it seems to be kind of 2 and 2 together, and they are making 4 now.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be surprised. I think certainly, I think what you can say is that there's not always smoke without fire. I think there seems to be genuine interest in the players. I think you can see the sense of going to a market now that the manager knows, particularly on the back of a very successful introduction of Kyogo Furuhashi. I think that it creates a confidence around being able to introduce players to a new culture and they can acclimatise quickly. I think there's an encouragement in how well he has done, and also in obviously knowing that the manager has had exposure to that league and now has had 4, 5, 6 months in the Scottish League and working with his own team to understand how certain players from elsewhere would have the necessary attributes that he may be looking for just to bolster his own squad and maybe put his own stamp on it. So I think it does make sense from everyone's point of view to go somewhere where you feel as though you know what you're getting. I think it remains to be seen if all 3 get over the line. I certainly do think there will be reinforcements in January. I think there's no question of that, and I think there's a common sense element to bringing in players whom you've worked with before or whom you've had exposure to and have an awareness of what they're going to bring to your existing team.
I think Ange's hand is quite strong as well, Alison, in terms of the fact that he's brought in Kyogo. Kyogo's made such a massive impact. If ever there was a time to trust a manager who could bring in players and the knowledge that he has, as you say, of that league and of those individuals concerned, then there must be a healthy element of trust within the Celtic board, maybe in this window, to say to him, okay, we kind of trust you to do this and bring what you want in. Yeah,
I think so. I think it's probably maybe a bit more complex than that in terms of involving scouting networks and assessment, but I think you're right. I think you look at Jota, I think you look at Juranovic, you look at Kyogo, and they've all had a fairly compelling contribution to make to Celtic this season as they've tried to rebuild and pick up the pieces from last term. I also think Carl Starfelt looks as though he's coming into a game. I think he's looking more comfortable as time goes on. I think I know we spoke about it at the start of the week, and I know I had written about it at the weekend. I thought his game against Hearts was probably his best performance in a Celtic shirt. So I think the manager, if you're going to assess his signings, I think at the minute, they look favourable. I think they've all come in pretty much. I know there's 1 or 2 that haven't made an impact at first team level yet, but I think over the piece just now, I think you would have to say that he knows what he wants, and he knows the way he wants his team to play, and he'll want an input into the types of players that come in that have an influence and can can perform to the standards and to the level that he's looking for.
Now Michael Quinn comes in, takes some comments. Michael Quinn said, really hope the Jota signing is on. If we get the 3 J-League players too, we have real options all over the place. Skills look capable, and Adam Montgomery could use further forward when needed. Ewan Boy Martin says, I think Jota will stay with us as he's guaranteed first team football, whereas if he leaves for a bigger club, he might not get much first team football. That's fair enough. And Sticks Doherty Music comes in and says, the board have no intention of keeping Jota. It's a pure business move. They would sell him the day after buying him if they can. And Frank Brennan, regular contributor, comes in, like it or not, the SPL is everything for Celtic this season, and we're not halfway through it yet, so we must really start to see there's only proper game management as to who plays or doesn't and when. Lots of people on the side of bringing in those players, Alison, that we've mentioned, and also securing Jota. It's no surprise because of the impact that Jota has made. John Curry also comes in and says we need to sign Cameron Carter-Vickers permanent too. He's a solid defender. I think they would sign him, but at 10 million, I don't think they would sign him if that price that's been quoted is true, Alison.
Yeah, I don't think he's one. I think the days of Celtic signing £10 million players just probably are. I was going to say gone. I'm not sure they've ever been there. I think Oxford was just over 9, but yeah, I just I think you have to be realistic. I would temper that by saying I'm not sure about the accuracy of the figure. I don't know if it is a true figure or not, but I think we can say that Celtic just aren't in the realms of that kind of money and those kind of deals. I think he's been fairly solid. I think if it's a more realistic figure, then it's something that I think they would look to do on a permanent basis. And I think too, you've got Christopher Julian coming back at some point that can help them out at the back. In terms of the Jota thing, I do wonder, just to go back to that, but I do wonder if Celtic are successful in winning the league this term and there's a gateway to Champions League football and going into the group stages, I do think that's a very significant carrot for players. I think there's a real pull in knowing that you're guaranteed Champions League football, and I think when it comes to selling the club to players and offering at least another season, I don't think you can underestimate what that does and what it gives you, because there are only so many clubs that you're competing with who can offer that kind of platform to go and play and to showcase what you have. And I think we know what Celtic's business model is. I think if players come and they stay for 2 seasons or whatever, 3 seasons, and then move on, I think it's been a fairly solid business plan over the last decade or so. But I think that works for both parties and being able to play and perform and then move on. And I think the Champions League definitely gives you a pretty special window.
Now, the last topic I wanted to cover, Alison, dead rubbers. Does Celtic play dead rubbers or not? That's a great quote from Anne. She says, I'm talking about dead rubbers. She said, Celtic don't play dead rubbers. She said, all players, he said he would love to play, but he's got one bad knee and he's overweight. That's absolutely tremendous quote that Anne said. He said that you learn things when you play in Europe. So we've had this kind of debate raging since Sunday about playing a weakened team against Real Betis on Thursday, and I actually think you'll play a hybrid of first team players and some players that need game time. I don't know what your own thoughts are on that, but
that's exactly what I would. That's what I would anticipate too. I think I don't think it will be an entirely youthful or weakened team, but I think it will probably be a mix of both. And I think when you look at the piece of how many games Celtic have got in December and how important they are, I think you'll be very wary of more injuries. I think it makes sense to maybe rest a few players, and I'm thinking of the likes of Callum McGregor, who know is, when you get to the end of the season, Callum McGregor's probably clocked up between 50 and 60 games for club and country and across all competition. And I think he's the kind of player that ideally you could say just take a breather tonight and bring in a few players who maybe haven't been starting as regular.
Frank Brennan comes in and says, of course there's such a thing as a dead rubber, and if there's still anyone in doubt as to what exactly it looks like, then all I have to do is watch the Betis game on Thursday and you'll see it in action. That's fair enough, Frank. We'll soon see what happens with that. But I mean, it is a healthy debate, isn't it? Because everybody knows that Celtic's priority this season is winning the title, Alison. And you ask yourself what's more important this week, the Betis game or the Motherwell game? To a man, woman and child, every Celtic fan would say it's the Motherwell game, isn't it? And getting points on the board.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about it. I think Celtic don't have any kind of safety net at the minute in terms of the league. I think every game comes under the must-win bracket for them. I think they can't really slip at all now, and I think the priority will just be getting through a very busy month unscathed. It's also a month that offers them the opportunity to go and claim the first silverware of the season, and also the first silverware since things really came apart last year. I think it would be restorative in a way to go and take a bit of silverware again. I think it just might be significant in terms of the confidence and belief within the squad that you've seen coming back again over the last few months. But I think you can't underestimate just how significant and how important this month is, just in making sure that you're in a good frame of mind during the break, and then that you're in a position to kick on for the latter half of the campaign.
Frank Brennan comes back in. So, for example, Vance basically fields a full-strength team against Betis, and God forbid we get another one or two injuries to crucial players, then I would find it very difficult to forgive Vance. That's a bit strong, Frank. Michael Quinn comes in and says, I'd be happy if McGregor, Rogic and Kyogo sit it out. I've seen a lot of that, Alison, that those are the three players that most people want to sit it out, McGregor, Rogic and Kyogo. And I'm also thinking as well, someone like Liam Scales could maybe come in. He showed what he could do at Tannadice, that wee cameo, and scored a fine goal when he came on. Guys like that maybe getting some game time. If that's in his head,
I'd agree with all of that. I think Rogic is just back from injury, and he's to be fair to him, he's come in and played at a fairly high level. He's come in and looked as though he's not really been away for a time, and I think for a player who's sometimes needed games to really get up to speed, I think that would be encouraging. But I can see the sense in letting him sit out Thursday night and just taking it easy, because you know that those three players who have been mentioned are key to Celtic. If they're fit, the likelihood is that they're going to be playing, and they'll be playing quite a lot of games. So I absolutely see, I think, one, you really don't want to risk any more injuries, especially to players who are such vital cogs to Celtic's strongest starting 11. And secondly, I think just to maybe let them have a rest and bring them back refreshed for the weekend.
John Curry comes in and says, we need to rest Hart for the Betis game, as they simply can't afford to lose them at this vital stage of the season. Will McMillan says, a few changes and a win keeps the momentum going. Frank's very emphatic here. The only so-called regular first-team players who should be playing on Thursday night are Hart and Abada. End of. We'll get that message translated to Ange on your behalf, Frank. We'll see what he says to it. And David Bradley says, Tony Scales could be a wee surprise for Celtic. Yeah. And then Frank comes back in. He says, my comments might sound a bit wrong, but as I said, that's only the harsh reality of what could possibly happen. I'm not disputing your logic, Frank. I'm just, I take it on board. I think there's a lot of merit in what you're saying, and we're discussing it as we're moving along. And I would like to see him just play a hybrid of first-team players and players that need game time, as myself and Alison have discussed. And I'll leave that up to the manager to make those decisions, and I'll trust them implicitly. And if players get injured, then I'll be like, oh, and everybody will say in hindsight, why did you do that? But it's a competitive football match, and Celtic have to put out a competitive team, Alison. There's coefficient points at stake in order moving forward for, do not have to play 4 qualifiers all the time. So these games do matter, don't they, as such?
Yeah, I think immediately you can see that the outcome has no effect on this season's Europa League campaign. But you're right. I think, one, you don't want to come off at the back of a morale-sapping heavy defeat. I think it does leave an imprint. I think you still want to go and put in a decent performance. So I think you want to tweak the team. You want to change things about. You want to be able to give people a rest, knowing what's going on round about and what takes place over the remainder of the month. But at the same time, I think you have to be sensible. I don't think you can make massive changes and go out and come in the back of a really tough result. And I think when you look at how Betis are playing just now and you look at some of their results, I think they look as though they're having a fairly decent campaign, to say the least.
Frank comes back in and says to me, hybrid, the word of the day. I'm going to read Alison's bookshelf for a dictionary and find out what it actually means, Frank. but it actually sounds good. And he said, no hindsight from me. I've told you all 48 hours before it happened. That's fair enough. Yeah. And on that note, we shall reconvene as we move along tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. We'll preview the big Betis game. Thanks, everybody, for your contribution, Frank included. Cheers, mate. Appreciate it. But we always do. We like the comments coming in, and we try and read out as many as possible. Alison, thank you for your contribution. Always enjoy that.
Pleasure.
Hope you enjoy your day, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Celtic Morning Briefing Live. Thank you.